51, yes 39. There was one informal, one member away on paternity leave. That seems to me to resolve the matter, and thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And while our politicians were plotting the future of Prime Minister Tony Abbott, 2.4 million Australians in our 5 capital cities were watching what was meant to be one of the biggest television events of the decade, in which Channels 7 and 9 went head-to-head with the real story of what happened in the Martin Place siege. And at times, it was riveting.
I thought he was going to shoot us in our back. I thought he was going to just start shooting.
Winner in the ratings by a whisker was 9's 60 Minutes. But neither did as well as expected, and both got smashed by House of Hancock and My Kitchen Rules. As for the journalism, winner by a whisker was Channel 7, which had 3 cameras trained on the Lindt Cafe throughout the siege from its Martin Place newsroom, and was able to capture key moments like this.
It's 2:14 a.m. Man Monis has killed Tory Johnson with a single shot to the back of his head.
It was not all so gripping. 9's recreations were pretty lame, and the emotion and the makeup was larded on with a trowel. But what do we feel about the networks packaging such traumatic events into a primetime blockbuster and paying so much money to the survivors? We reckon 7 and 9 spent $2.5 million or more to secure exclusive interviews with 14 of the hostages. And some are outraged at those payments.
2 innocent hostages lost their lives. I do not think it is morally right that the media pay, and any of those who were saved should profit from the attack. Just plain grubby. Sorry if I offend a few, but should be a law against this exploitation.
Many share that view, but I must say, I find it hard to argue with Peter Meakin, news boss at Channel 10, who told Media Watch,
"This is an important story and the networks are going to make money out of it. So why shouldn't the hostages get some compensation for all the pain and suffering they went through?"
Big as the payments are, they are not a record. In 2006, Channel 9 reportedly paid $2.6 million to Todd Russell and Brant Webb, who were buried for 14 days in the Beaconsfield mine collapse, for their 2-hour special, The Great Escape. But the difference is the networks won't get their money back this time. In 2006, Channel 9 doubled its ad rates for the broadcast and recouped its cash in one quick hit. But 9 and 7's exclusives were essentially the same story. And last night they split the audience because they both had to be first.
This is big swinging dick stuff. What this is all about is one-upmanship, outflanking your opposition and having bragging rights on Monday morning. This is really not on the side of revenue. The upside is less than $1 million.
Or, in other words, they could be $1.5 million short of what they paid. But of course, the networks are also fighting for the big political drama of the year, where it's all been on offer for free.
Prime Minister under siege.
Live in Canberra.
Mark, you have the inside story.
Breaking it as it happens.
Abbott versus Turnbull. Who will be Prime Minister?
This morning, Tony Abbott successfully fought off a challenge to his leadership, at least for now. So is he a dead man walking, or did the experts get it wrong? Since last week, the pundits have been busy reading the PM his last rites, with ex-Liberal staffer Nikki Sava telling readers of The Australian,
"Tony Abbott's rule is over. It is effectively dead, and what we are witnessing are the death throes."
Next day, there was a chorus of agreement, with the Australian Financial Review's Laura Tingle assuring us,
"The only question is how it will happen and how long Abbott can hang on."
Michelle Grattan in the conversation was also ushering the PM into the wings.
If Abbott survives in the short term, it's quite likely he'll be kicked out later.
And Labor's one-time numbers man, Graham Richardson, was already anointing Malcolm Turnbull as Australia's next leader.
It seems clear that sometime soon Malcolm will get the job that he has seen as his destiny since childhood.
They may, of course, still be right. In which case, stand by for more of the craziness we've seen in the last week. And crazy it was. Because with everyone convinced it was going to happen, the race was on to find evidence that Mr Abbott's rivals were plotting his downfall. And even the trace of a scent was enough.
Breaking. 2 federal Liberal MPs have just confirmed to me that Malcolm Turnbull has called to ask if they will vote for him as leader.
When the Drum's Julia Baird tweeted that unsourced snippet last Wednesday, journalists in the Twitterverse lit up with excitement.
Well, hello.
Amazing scoop by Julia Baird on Turnbull making calls.
And within an hour, BuzzFeed's Mark DiStefano was observing what he called the "it's on" phenomenon.
How one rumour can totally melt down Twitter.
It's on. It's on.
On, baby, on.
On.
But was Baird's tip actually right? Sky's David Spears was pretty sure it was not.
That's not the information that I've been getting. I've been on the phones all morning.
And the ABC's political editor, Chris Uhlmann, was also not convinced.
Turnbull is not canvassing votes, and his supporters accuse Mr Abbott's backers, not the Prime Minister's office, of trying to flush him out.
Uhlmann's tweet linked back to a story which claimed that the ABC had contacted dozens of Liberal MPs by phone and been unable to confirm Baird's unsourced claim. And before long, the rumour was being denied on Radio 2.
I can tell you categorically that Malcolm Turnbull has not been ringing colleagues and canvassing for support, because I asked him myself point blank and he told me that it was not true. So I can tell you that is not true.
Yet despite all these doubts and denials and the lack of any hard evidence, the story still made news on TV 7 hours later.
There's been talk Malcolm Turnbull's been ringing MPs looking for support, denied by his office.
And it was not just on 9. Channel 10 News and ABC 7:30 also gave it airtime. And Julia Baird led the debate with it when she hosted The Drum, where she still stood by her unnamed sources. Next day, the chase was on again. Only this time, it was 2GB's Ben Fordham who set the hare running.
Interesting fact, Julie Bishop and Malcolm Turnbull have arranged to meet at his Sydney home today.
So, here we were again, an unsubstantiated rumour with no times, no details, and before long, another blizzard of denial, starting with Mr T.
You need to improve your surveillance. I am on the train to Tuggerah.
And so he was. But that wasn't enough for Fordham, who then asked directly,
Did you meet with Julie Bishop at your Sydney home today?
Once again, Turnbull denied it.
No, Ben. At 11:30am, I was not meeting with Julie Bishop. After a meeting at NBN Co, I was waiting for a train at North Sydney.
Minutes later, the other would-be plotter stamped her denial on the rumour too.
Wrong information. In Canberra this morning, flew to Sydney, filmed by Channel 9, now with Fiona Scott.
Time, you'd have thought, for Fordham to back down. But still he persisted, whereupon the Deputy Liberal leader denied it even more forcefully.
I did not meet Malcolm Turnbull at his home. I even told you the Qantas flight I was on. So what's the point you're not making?
As all this was playing out on Twitter, it was also making news in the mainstream media, with The Guardian following it blow by blow in a live blog. And the Daily Mail Australia pouncing on it too, with a full wrap of the so-called story.
Malcolm Turnbull and Julie Bishop tweet pictures of themselves to deny secret leadership talks after radio host Ben Fordham claimed they had met.
And by mid-afternoon, Sydney's big hometown players, the Sydney Morning Herald and the Daily Telegraph, were also running it too. But this was just the start. Turnbull had tweeted that he was on the way to Tuggerah on the New South Wales Central Coast. So the media pack was soon in hot pursuit to go fetch more amazing news.
Malcolm Turnbull evades leadership questions at Warnervale pub.
Wow. So what had he done? Done a runner? Snuck out the back? Well, no.
As he stepped out of his car, he was immediately asked if he would challenge Prime Minister Tony Abbott for the top job.
Yes, so he refused to answer? No again.
The pre-prepared line was rolled out with the criminally smooth delivery for which he has become renowned.
Tony Abbott has the support of the entire party.
Yep, criminal. Now, years ago, this sort of rubbish would have been spiked or binned well before the presses began to roll. But nowadays, every bit of gossip and speculation gets a public airing, even if the story is there is no story. Now, the media loves a leadership challenge, and it wasn't making this one up. But this frenzy of reporting rumour and denial and unidentified, unnamed sources is ridiculous. And it's no surprise some are now suggesting it's partly to blame for Australia's political turmoil. So Media Watch decided to ask some of our former leaders 3 questions.
Has modern media made Australia more difficult to govern? Has it made the country ungovernable? Is the media to blame in any way for current political instability?
Former Labour leader Mark Latham told us brutally,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
Former Prime Minister Paul Keating answered almost as bluntly,
fundamentally no, no,
and
broadly no.
And just to complete the picture, former Liberal leader Brendan Nelson, who was deposed by Malcolm Turnbull, told us yes and no, adding,
it has made good governance more difficult and demanded much more of leaders than in the past.
But in some ways, the most interesting and thoughtful answers came from former Liberal leader John Hewson, who told us that the media has made life more difficult for leaders because social media and the 24-hour news cycle has sped everything up dramatically.
Politics has responded by attempting to win what has become a media game, now almost hour by hour. The whole process has become incredibly short-term in focus and mostly about point scoring, mostly negative, personal and opportunistic.
So, has it made the country ungovernable, we asked, to which Hewson replied,
yes, unless politicians actually are prepared to step out of the media game and are prepared to lead.
And whose fault is it? Media or our leaders?
Fundamentally, bad government and the performance of some individuals is to blame. But some of the media have become players in the game, seeing themselves as creating events, determining outcomes. At times, this has been a significant contributor to political instability, particularly accelerating and compounding it.
And finally tonight, to the Bali Nine. As you may have seen on Four Corners, the families of two convicted Australian heroin smugglers last Friday got the news they've been dreading.
Bali 9 duo Mayaran Sukumaran and Andrew Chan will be executed this month. Sukumaran's younger sister Brintha cried as she begged for her brother to be allowed to live. Please don't kill my brother, please. He is a good person. He is rehabilitated and we love him so much. Please don't kill him. Please, please, Brintha said.
Tony Abbott had made public appeals for clemency, their lawyers had sought a new appeal, and vigils had been held across Australia. But the Indonesian authorities seemed most impressed by an Australian opinion poll.
52% of the Australian people is supporting Indonesian position.
The poll in question, conducted by Roy Morgan Research via mobile phone, was published on 27th of January by the ABC's Triple J, who described the poll as done for hack and said it found most people think the firing squad should pull the trigger. The question it had asked was this.
In your opinion, if an Australian is convicted of drug trafficking in another country and sentenced to death, should the penalty be carried out?
With two lives in the balance, we can't imagine why Triple J thought it a good idea to ask this. Even less can we see why they chose to publish the answer online that gave the execution the thumbs up. Hack's Tom Tilley told Media Watch he thought it was both appropriate and timely. But Greg Craven, one of the backers of the Mercy campaign, strongly disagrees.
It was a totally irresponsible thing to do. They went out of their way to ask a sensational question that was designed to get a sensational answer that could have a sensational effect of killing two of our fellow citizens.
Faced with the suggestion that Indonesia had used the poll to justify the planned executions, Hack's host, Tom Tilley, went on Triple J to defend their decisions and attack what he called misreporting.
We did not commission the poll and there was no payment for that poll. What we did do was approach Roy Morgan Research and suggest that they conduct a poll on this subject at that particular time. And they gave us first go at broadcasting the results, which we did. Now, obviously, this particular issue is hugely sensitive, but I think it would be a dangerous precedent for journalists not to report information because they were fearful of how politicians might react.
Well, we find that pretty unconvincing. Whether Triple J paid for the poll or not is irrelevant. The fact is they ordered it. And it's not just about politicians reacting, it's about the life or death of two people. In our view, it's a sad and terrible error that the poll was commissioned and published. And you can read more about tonight's stories on our website, where you can also get a transcript and download the programme. You can also catch up with us on iView and contact me or Media Watch on Twitter. But for now, until next week, that's all from us. Goodbye.